I think initially I started this project so that it could be about women who have been sexually assaulted and what their families and friends and loved ones really need to know about how to help them cope and work through their healing process. But I think in doing this project, it turned into so much more.
Sexual assault is an epidemic.
Yeah.
Maybe it always has been. I don't know. Yeah. But it certainly is now.
What is the word for, like, when things go up and down?
Roller coaster?
Yeah, I guess like roller coaster.
I think particularly with sexual assault, especially with women, because of the way that gender roles are not equal in our society, but partly because of the way trauma makes us uncomfortable, and we don't want to acknowledge it, and we certainly don't want to acknowledge some of the really negative forces in our culture, then we think, well, this person must have caused it herself.
My name's Laura Farrell, and I am 27 years old. I was away my first year of college. I was in my college dorm room with some friends. We were supposed to go to a party. There's like probably 10 of us in the room, and then people just kept leaving, and I was drinking, and then at some point it was just me and my two friends, and we were all sort of talking, and suddenly like something shifted and the lights were turned off and they locked the doors, and it was just a very terrible experience, pretty violent. I ended up in the hospital afterwards.
What's your name?
My name is Allison Moore.
And how old are you?
I'm 19. I was in high school. I lived in New York, or I live in New York, and I was at a party. It was my senior year, and it was over Thanksgiving break, or do you want to come to like our party? And I was drunk by then, the first time I was ever drunk in my life, and so we went, yeah, I know. We went to the party, and I was immediately rushed downstairs, and we were all like in the basement, and there was this room. There were two rooms. Like you walk down the stairs, and to one side it was like a living room, and the other side there was this door leading to this room, and it had a bunch of beds in it. And later,
just beds?
Yeah, just like a bunch of beds. And later on I'm finding out that this is called the Village. Standing by the stairs, and this guy named John, he came up behind me and was like, oh, do you want to go make out with me in the closet? And I was like, no, like my parents are calling me. It's like, it's way too late. We're just waiting for Kylie and Dylan. And he's like, oh, don't make them wait. Like they'll be fine. Let's just go and like make out. And I said no at first, and then I was like, oh, you know what? Another guy wants to come make out with me. Like this was exciting.
Cool. Yeah.
I was drunk, you know, and I was like, oh, the same thing's gonna happen. So we go into the room and we start making out, and then he asked,
Is it dark?
Yeah, it was completely dark. It was a closet, and it had a blow-up mattress in it. Yeah, inside, okay, so the room with all the beds, and then inside that room there was a room with a blow-up mattress, like a closet, and started making out, and he asked me if I wanted to have sex, and I said no. He kept asking me. I said no. He said, it'll only be 30 seconds. I have a condom. I won't tell anybody. And he kept calling me an asshole. He said, you're such an asshole. Why aren't you having sex with me? You're such an asshole. I said, no. I tried to grab the door, and he had pulled me back. And then he like got on top of me, and I tried to push him off, and then he penetrated me, and then yeah, I just froze up. I couldn't feel anything, and it was awful. And then when he was done, he was trying to put his clothes back on, and I was like so frazzled, and he didn't want to put his shirt on. It was a purple like button-down shirt, and I had turned on the lights and he was fully like naked and I had all my clothes on.
Just sort of called them and told them like what I was told from the doctors would happen, because I didn't even like believe that I just went through those events. It was like watching a film.
Yeah.
So I sort of just followed what they said, and my mom was just my parents are really calm in crisis, actually, which is amazing, and they've dealt with a lot of crisis with me. So they were just like, okay, we're coming to get you.
Do you think it's key that parents and loved ones understand what a person who has been sexually assaulted is going through emotionally and physically?
Absolutely. Sometimes the trauma is as much what happens with loved ones after as the trauma itself. Because if you're not heard or understood, that's a betrayal by a loved one.
My family has been like huge support. My dad had a really hard time. Both my parents had a really hard time with it, obviously. It's like not something any parent wants to hear or their worst nightmare, you know. My friends, it's been really, really hard. A lot of them dropped me. They just couldn't handle it, and they couldn't, I don't know. One of my best friends, it's really sad, she had told me, like, she was there that night, the girl I was telling you was in the bathroom. She told me, she was like, oh, like, I don't know, I guess, she's like, it's not that big of a deal, like, I don't know why you're doing this, and she, like, made it about her when she had to go get her statement. Yeah. She's never texted me about it. It's really sad that I lost her in the whole thing, and I've lost a lot of other friends, and nobody's really ever asked me about it now. You know, it's a very sensitive subject for people to, nobody wants to, like, ask. Nobody knows how to ask.
You have to understand, like, how your reaction will affect someone else.
I'll have a client who's been sexually assaulted, and I'll bring the parents in for part of the session to try to help them understand, for instance, why their child is so deeply affected by what happened, or why it's taking so long to heal.
What are the key things that you really try to express to them when they come into these sessions?
One of the things is that there will be, in most cases, a pretty big impact on the person who's been sexually assaulted. And the impact may be on self-esteem, on relationships, on their ability to function in school. They may be irritable and angry and lash out. So to try to see that there are complex and chronic effects of being sexually assaulted.
Just started not becoming myself and like not wanting to do the things I love, having panic attacks in school.
So the families have patience. Another one is that it takes time to heal, and that it's very important that the person be able to tell the story over and over again, or not talk about it if they don't want to talk about it.
But to have the freedom to feel like they can if they need to.
Yes. So part of that is helping them to have as much control and power over their own lives as they can. So the first one is, patience with the complexity of the whole thing and how long it's going to take. And the second is to empower the person as much as possible to be in control of their own healing. What would be the third? I guess just that relationships of all kinds are affected. When someone's body has been physically invaded by someone else out of hatred or selfishness or whatever kind of motive they have that's not love and that's not consent, that has a big toll sort of on a survival basis, because the integrity of your being has been invaded.
Do you give them any type of things that they can really look to when the person that they know that's been sexually assaulted is having a hard time communicating? Do you give them advice on like how to go about it or how to approach the situation?
So for some people it would be just leave them alone and let them tell you what they need. For other people it would be you actually need to help them get out of bed and and get to school because they're going to feel better when they get to school.
What do you think of the word victim?
I think the word victim connotes helplessness, and people don't like to feel helpless. So that's the downside of it. The positive side of it is that it says, yeah, you're not responsible for what happened to you.
I think the word victim carries a lot of weight. I think there's points in my story that I felt like a victim and felt victimized, and there's other points where I feel like I've survived or I'm a survivor. And I think I use both, and I think both are helpful for me. And I think more often than not, though, I have felt like a victim because I think things didn't necessarily, in any of these moments, turn out the way that I wanted. Like, going from the assault to going to the way that it was managed afterwards, or the lack of justice that was served. So I do feel like a victim, but if someone else called me a victim, I would probably be like, well,
No.
you can't say that.
I can say it, but you can't
I
say
can
it.
use whatever language I want, but unless I give you permission, you should call me a survivor, I would say.
I think that it's true and that the word survivor is also true. Some days you feel like a victim and some days you feel like a survivor. And even though you did survive the whole thing and I survived the whole thing, I think that, like, yeah, I was sexually assaulted, I was raped, I was a victim of something, and I don't think it should be taken as that harsh of a term because
Like, it's not a victim in the fact that you're weak, but it's a victim in the fact that, like, it was something that you didn't want to happen to you, and like that's why it makes you a victim.
Because I don't like consider myself a weak person at all.
Sometimes in social work, what we do is we make complicated sentences in order to get around this problem. So we might say, a person who has experienced sexual assault, because you don't want to be equal to the thing that's happening to you or has happened to you.
Okay.
So that's the problem with victim. I would say I don't use the word that much, but I also want to be really careful that people aren't blamed for what's happened to them. The word that comes to me is integrated, actually, because I think traumatic experience are fracturing of the self in some ways, and so it's pulling together and feeling whole again. Is a little earlier, before healing can happen, is dissociation.
Okay.
Do you know that word? It's kind of a disconnection. It's often a disconnection from reality, and it's something people dissociate during traumatic experiences often in order to protect themselves, to distance yourself from an overwhelming thing that's happening. That part has to be healed, where you can deal with what's happened to you. You can tell your story. You can have your story heard. You can integrate it into who you are, and you no longer need to escape reality in order to cope with it.
What is the word for, like, when things go up and down?
Roller coaster?
Yeah, I guess like a roller coaster, because it's definitely gone through a lot of different phases. It fluctuates. I guess the other one where, in terms of, like, along with that would either be like ongoing or long. Because I think, it's just like a lifelong experience.
Courage. Courage to be able to go and speak out, because that was really a main way of healing for me, was going and giving my statement and telling someone what had happened and feeling like I actually did something about the situation. And I mean, that's not for everyone, and that's okay if that's how you heal. Everyone has different ways of healing, but for me, going and telling someone and making sure this guy never did this to another girl was big. And courage to actually go and tell a counselor about it and talk about it was big for me too. Painful, I guess. Nobody wants to say that it was like, I guess nobody wants to take that back. Painful, because it was painful. I had a lot of, like, downs. I had a lot of panic attacks at night. I've freaked out in crowds. I've freaked out in small spaces. Everyone has their triggers, and you don't know what some of them are. But overall, it's not like I want someone to be sorry for me because it was painful. It was painful, and it made me so much of a stronger person. Having to go through it, I mean, yeah, you feel like you're not gonna get through it, and you're gonna get through it.